All right, sorry about that. Chris, I apologize. My son tried to call me, and I don't know what happens with this Facebook Live. When someone tries to call in, all of a sudden it freezes, it disconnects, it does something. I don't know what the heck it does. I guess I need to figure out how to put on my phone, do not call me or do not disturb while I'm doing this. So let me try to bring Chris back on. Let me send him an invite. So Chris, if you are back on, if you want to just hop back on with me, I apologize. And we'll see if Chris is able to come back on. If anybody knows how to avoid people calling in and having your Facebook Live freeze, if you don't mind sharing that little secret with me, it would be greatly appreciated. Because I think it happened a couple of times now. So John's back on watching. We hadn't recognized everybody who was on. So John was on. Jordan Murray was on before. Of course, Chris was on. And then we had a couple other individuals on. So, okay. So let me see if it'll allow me send invite. Chris back on. Chris is coming. We're adding Chris. And there he is. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
I don't know. I need to figure out how to. So I figured out that if someone tries to call me when I'm on here,
Oh,
then I hang up, and the next thing I know, it's like I lost connection completely, and I just freeze up, and it doesn't ever reconnect. So I got to
yeah.
either put myself on like do not disturb or some kind of garbage if I'm trying to do it from my phone.
Yeah. I was gonna do it from computer, but I don't have a camera on the computer.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
it's
did. I
whatever.
did one with the computer a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember what happened. There was issues like bringing people on, and then I got angry with the computer, and uh,
Yeah.
needless to say, the computer didn't survive our little contentious moment, and so I figured I would just do the phone thing now. I have a new Surface Pro that I need to fine tune to make sure that the podcast equipment Dan Blanc sent me is correctly connected with the Surface Pro. So that way, when I bring you on or bring a guest on, I've got like phone sound effects. I've got audience clapping. I've got all kinds of cool things,
Yeah.
to make things a little more entertaining or more lively.
Yeah.
But I got back in town from training, went and did some estimates, went and looked at a job that we're going to start on Tuesday. Sold a really big fence job out in it's Fort Calhoun, but it's I don't know if you ever heard of the Northern Lights venue out
Uh,
in Fort Calhoun. It's
I
a gorgeous wedding venue place that you can do
think I've
parties
heard
in.
of that.
Yeah, so they had a fence built by Empire a few years ago, actually during COVID, so 2020, and then they were supposed to get it stained, and then of course COVID hit, and then nobody was out doing wedding venues
Yeah.
and crap like that, and so they never uh, got to getting it done. And then we tried to commit them on last year of getting it done, and then they had some other things that came up. I think some medical issues, and so this year he's ready to have it done. And as soon as the weather looks like it's going to be nice enough to do it, we're going to go knock it out before something else comes in.
I'm
But
gonna
it's a
say
pretty big job to go wash and stain.
Tuesday's gonna be ridiculously cold.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think they're calling for snow coming in
Yeah.
this week also
They're
here in our area.
calling Monday. Well, Monday I got to go to Des Moines to wire a gate operator, and then Monday night into Tuesday it's supposed to snow, and then I think Wednesday, and
Okay.
then
Yeah.
Saturday and next week or a
Yeah.
week from today.
Yeah.
But
So we might get our snow late in the year this year.
I mean at this point I'll take whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to do residential snow removal,
I
and
remember that.
you talk about like you mentioned, snow never tells you when it's going to come and not come.
No.
The weatherman's probably the only business that he could be so upside down on his predictions and
Mm,
still be considered credible and professional. Like
yeah,
we're gonna get
get paid.
8 inches of snow, and then we get like not even a flake of snow,
Yeah,
and then the
get paid
next day he's
100.
getting awarded as the top meteorologist of 2023 or
Yeah,
if you and I went out there and we told a customer uh, we gave them a 40% truth kind of thing, we'd be considered crooks or
yeah,
criminals because we're dishonest in that. But
yeah.
meteorologists, those guys, they can get away with being 10% right,
Get,
90% wrong
get
and be
paid the
considered
hundred thousand
experts.
dollars to be wrong all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah,
yeah. So as far as fence building, what are you typically using here in the Omaha market for building
uh,
fences?
I would.
Pressure treated pine or cedar, or what's your top?
We try to sell all cedar, but a lot of people. I mean, you got to compete with the market.
Hmm.
Uh, so I mean, I would say 85% of the companies in Omaha, they're using fir two by fours and incense cedar or Japanese cedar pickets.
Hmm.
And I'll, I mean, I would say probably 75-ish% of the wood fences we put up are just that fir two by fours, and just because everybody's just you got to compete with the market
Yeah.
and try to sell the job. And but the one thing that we do is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure we were the first ones in Omaha to do no dig.
Okay.
And uh, Sean
Yep.
King, uh, when I saw him the way he did no dig with the King Plus and stuff, in my opinion, that's the strongest way to install a fence.
Yeah.
Uh, I we just did one yesterday. We finished it,
Hmm.
and I mean, the customer was ecstatic with us, paid us right away. I mean, we weren't even out of the driveway, and she already paid me.
Nice.
And uh, I think it's the strongest way to build it, especially because I don't know if you've seen the video of him taking an airboat when they were down in Florida and back.
Yeah.
I mean, they were what, 15, 20 feet from the fence, and it didn't even bend the post or nothing. It actually bowed two by fours.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
uh, okay. And then he was actually in Lincoln and did the postmaster test versus a round pipe.
Hmm.
And John McCain, that owns J&M in Lincoln, he bent it over like it was a twig.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, well, that. And then I did all the math between postmasters and round pipe and stuff, and it to me it was just a no brainer, and it's 100 times stronger. The only thing I would do different, and the only reason I haven't done it yet, is just because I'm such a small company, I can't afford to buy a truckload in bulk and sit on it.
Yeah.
And I usually not in the summertime, it's not per job. I can buy a little bit in bulk in the
Hmm.
summer. Like I can go and buy uh 10, 12 bundles of pickets. But
Hmm.
I mean, I to get the only thing I would do different is use schedule 40 2 3/8 post instead of
Hmm.
schedule 20. But
Hmm.
like I said, the only way for me to even get close to the price point I need to be to compete with everybody using wood posts is I got to buy a truckload of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's probably $250,000
Yeah.
for
It's
a
a huge
truckload of,
investment on your part to
and I'd sit on
hope
it
that
for,
people go
yeah,
that route.
I'd end up having to probably try to resell half of it just to try to recoup some of
Yeah.
it. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's the main issue for all the small people in Omaha is everybody everybody just goes to America's Fence store and to buy everything in bulk or the big box stores or whatever. And then all the like you go shoot, you drive past S&W or American Fence, and I bet they got
Yeah.
over $1 million in product, if not more, sitting on the lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
American
mean,
Fence is the same way. You drive by their facility off what is it, I-80, and that vicinity. They've got that big warehouse over there.
yeah,
Uh,
they
you
got
look in
one
their
on.
lot, and they've got piles and piles of material.
Yeah.
and but they've got the income revenue and they've got the assets
Mhm.
where, like you mentioned, they can go buy, having $500,000 worth of supplies in their yard is nothing to them.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I like, I go in the summertime, I'll go and buy, say I got 15, 20 wood jobs sold. I go
Hmm.
and buy all that material in bulk because I can get it a little bit cheaper if I buy
Yeah,
that much in bulk. But
yeah,
then it's sitting out in the yard and I'm staring at it like, okay, we got to get this in the ground and
yeah,
built. And like, I can't sit on it for 6 months.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's the only thing I would really do different is use schedule 40 posts instead of schedule 20. But it, for me, it's the buying in bulk's the biggest
Hmm.
thing that stops us. And we're
Yeah,
trying to get into the financing and stuff for helping customers do it that way too. But
sure.
just to try to capture some of that market. But
Yeah, do you mind explaining to folks who maybe have never heard or don't know what no dig means?
it's, well, the way we do it, it's called King Plus, and Sean King, he basically the one that invented the way that this is installed. It's a 2.5 or 2 3/8 round pipe, 8 foot long. We drive it 4 feet in the ground. Uh, and then you take a wooden box, it's two by fours and a picket. The only thing I would change about the box is at some point, if I can get it in bulk, is use 5/4 deck boards just because they're a little bit thicker than a picket. Because sometimes when you put the boxes on, the picket will break.
Hmm.
Um, and then you take the box, put it over the post, and instead of 3 2x4s, it's 4 2x4s because you put a cross grain across the top, and then it makes it a lot more stronger against the wind too.
Hmm.
So it can't just blow over,
Yeah.
and it's just a lot stronger build. And then you just build it like a normal wood fence. And the other thing we started offering was uh, steel frame gates.
Hmm.
Uh, we've done 2 steel frame gates. They're Cat 5 metal gates, and Sean actually sells the kit. And when I did the math, and for what he's selling the kit for, I was like, there's no point for me to, because he buys it so much in bulk to resell it as a kit. I'm like, I'm not saving more than $5 or $6. I'm like, I'll just give Sean the money, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
instead of 5 different shipments to me, it's one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but and I talked to Sean about it when I actually sold the first one, and I was like, the first one, it took me an hour and 12 or an hour and 17 minutes to build it
Hmm.
because I was like, I didn't want to screw it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
the
yeah, and it's
second
not like
second
it's a
one,
cheap setup to
no,
screw around with in the first place,
no,
you know.
there's a ton of rivets and screws, and there's a lot more
Hmm.
to it. But the second one we built, it took me probably, I think it was 30 something minutes quicker.
Yeah.
And now I can do it in probably 5 or 10 minutes quicker than a wood frame gate now.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
just all about the repetition and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why,
And just experiencing and like you mentioned, it's like I was watching a reel the other day about a husband putting together some IKEA furniture deal. That he opens up the box, pulls out the instruction manual. It's like 12 pages long, and it's got 16 different pieces of slots and stuff, and 100 and something screws.
yeah,
And he's like, I don't need no damn instructions. And he throws the instructions off to the side, and he starts trying to fiddle around. And an hour later, his wife comes back, and he's still sitting there. Now he's looking at the instruction manual, and he's like sitting there going,
yeah,
"Shit, I should have kept it in the box because the box were labeled A, B, C, and D,
yep,
and now I don't know which one is in A and which one's in C." And it just kind of reminded me of anything that we do. At first, it's going to take time, but once
yep,
you get that experience of putting it together and building it and going through it, before you know it, it's just eventually, like you mentioned, you're what, like 30 minutes faster now
yeah. It's
than you
all
were the
about the
first time.
procedure.
And then, and
I'm
like
sure.
you mentioned, you spend a couple extra. You're spending a little bit more, but just the amount you're spending is well worth the product that you're going to provide in the end.
Yeah. And then like I'm sure it's the same with you and staining and stuff. The procedure and the processes, the
Yeah.
more you do it, the faster you get.
Yeah,
And
we
but
used to stain a two-man crew. We used to stain a deck a day. Your average deck, right? Like a 12 by 16, let's just say. We could get a deck a day and we would feel like we were pretty competent. We did a good job. And now if we have a 2 or 3 man crew, there's times where we knock out 3 decks and we're doing the exact same thing. We've just become more efficient
yep,
of how we're doing it, how we're setting things up, prep work. You know, we all have a standard operating procedure that we follow, that we've memorized, that we don't have to sit there and look at. When we get to the job site, Billy Bob's going to grab tarps and Joey Jim is going to grab whatever. It's, we go to the back of the truck and we start grabbing, we start setting up, we start prepping, we start,
yep,
doing it. And now through time, efficiency, and experience, 2, 3 decks a day is no big deal for us to hand stain.
yeah. I mean,
But it took years of
yeah, repetition.
mastering that or
Yeah,
experiencing that to get to that point.
yeah. That's the same with like the first no dig job we did. It took us a day and a half to get the posts in because
Mm-hmm.
we I didn't know what the heck we were doing. I'm like we were
Yeah.
just winging, and then it took us like 2 days to frame it. It was down a really really steep yard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was. Uh, that's the only bad thing about doing no dig. That that way, the King Plus way is on a hill. The box, you got to cut the downhill side at. You got to cut the box at the angle to get it to. Otherwise, you have a huge gap and it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And that's the only. I mean, uh, thing I would change about no dig is there's one guy. I think he's in Wisconsin or Minnesota. And then Josh Rand, he has a drill rig where he actually takes a 4x4 or 5x5 post and drills a 2.5 inch hole through the post 3 feet, and they slide it over the pipe.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I got one quote for the machine, and I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. And then,
Yeah.
but
Pretty expensive.
well, Josh Rand said that he made his himself for less than a couple $1,000, and I was like, can you send me pictures?
Yeah.
And I've asked him a couple of times, but I never got any.
What,
Because I'm like, to
where's
me,
Josh out of? Is he out of Minnesota or
he's in
Wisconsin?
Utah. He's in Utah.
Utah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about now. I
Uh,
was thinking of a different
Aloha
gentleman, but
fence.
yeah.
Aloha fence.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I think the one guy in Wisconsin or Minnesota. I think it's Aaron Smith
Okay.
with A to Z. Yeah, A to
Yeah.
Z.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So what another benefit to no dig, would that be the fact that you're not tearing up people's yards as far as like
yeah,
digging the
the
post
only
holes and things like that?
yeah the with the no dig we don't have to. The only time we have to dig is when we're near utility lines.
Okay.
And we've done no dig enough that I have like even when we're digging holes, if we do it like we just did one Monday that was dig and set because the customer wanted wood posts. But
Mm-hmm.
and if we're close enough, like I've been doing it long enough that I can almost trust my gut. I'm like, okay, we're within the 18 inches. The paint mark's 10, 12 inches away. I
Mm-hmm.
know the cable's not that close.
Yeah.
Like I almost guarantee. And then I don't know if have you ever heard of water witching,
I've heard of that. I couldn't tell you what it is. I've heard it
where
in
you
like
take
passing kind of thing.
if you take a one of the marking flags for cables, take the plastic flag off and bend it into an L,
Okay.
and then hold the short side in your hand, and then as you got to step back and then walk toward the perpendicular to the lines, and when the wire turns, that's where your cable is.
Oh,
It works.
okay.
It works really well with power. The old coax. It doesn't work that well with fiber.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's the
and
same concept for finding like water wells that some
yeah,
of the
yeah,
the
you
old
can do.
timers would do
Yep.
with
You put two of them together, and when
yeah.
they cross, start digging.
Yeah. And it works.
Yeah, eventually you'll find water.
Yeah, I was just gonna point out like so there have been times where I've met Chris at jobs that he's working on, and I remember I think it was last year you were there near Fort Crook Road and uh, Chandler, in between that neighborhood somewhere. I can't remember the development, and there was like a property that you were about to work on that you were telling me like the slope that you had and the retaining wall crap
uh,
and so it just
oh,
amazes me that when you
was
think
it
of like fence building,
was it
most people
wintertime and
think
a
of it
four
as
foot
a
vinyl?
pretty easy cookie cutter type of deal. But there are many jobs where you go to and you find that you're not just. I think you were like doing like an absurd amount of posts that you had to put in there because of the depth or the incline or decline. Um,
I remember which
I don't know
job
if you
it
remember that
was.
or not.
Was it a 4 foot picket vinyl job?
I think so. Yeah, it had
And
like a
then and they,
weird. You were like
and they
telling
had
me
a
like the all the obstacles that you were running
yeah,
into or you had to deal
yeah,
with, and I'm just
and
like, what the hell?
the retaining wall in the backyard. It was no dig vinyl,
Yeah.
and uh,
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
the retaining wall in the backyard wasn't built. Well, it wasn't built on the property line for one, and it wasn't built square with the lot, and so we had to like get waivers from all the neighbors and get lawyers involved, and there was a whole bunch of BS in that. But then we started driving posts, and we took the 8 foot post and put it 4 feet in the ground, and it went 4 feet in about 5 seconds. And I'm like, this isn't packed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could literally just pull the post out, and we ended up going from 8 foot to 12 foot posts and put them. Well, since it was 4 foot, we put them almost 10 feet in the ground
Yeah.
before, and it was about 6, 7 feet down before we hit solid dirt because they didn't put
Yeah.
rock or anything behind the wall. And I'm like, good luck pulling this out. And uh, but yeah, I remember which job that was.
Yeah. And that that's just one example that testifies of your comment of quantity over or quality over quantity. Because how many other fence companies would have come in there and just thrown whatever together and
Yep,
hope that no one realized what was going on, and then hopefully
they're
get paid right away and then move on and hope that nothing happens within a certain period of time so that they're not getting caught
yeah.
on the
There's
neglectful actions that they just ignored because they
there's
just
some
wanted to put it up and get out of there.
yeah there's some jobs that we go out and repair, and all we got one that we're doing at the end of February, and the people that put it up, uh, I don't know what they were thinking. It was 6 foot picket, semi-private, and they just set the posts whatever. They didn't set them inside to inside what they needed to be, and or get the measurements, and so they just got all the section rails made the same. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then they got to the end, and they would, instead of a 3 inch wide picket, they'd cut like a 1 inch sliver and made it
Mm-hmm.
fit, and then the rail wouldn't fit. And I was just I was walking around the yard, and the guy was like, I would stop and just look at it, and he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, I've never seen this before. Like, this is nuts. Like, you paid these people?"
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm like, they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "I'm sorry."
Yeah.
I'm like, I would have fired everybody that worked for me.
Yep. Yep. So I looked at a deck yesterday, and it's not a fence, but just kind of similar. You're bringing that up. So where the top rail would connect to the post, they either cut the 2x4 too short, or they mismeasured, or they did something, and they actually put in like a little chunk of wood to fill
Oh yeah,
that gap, so that the 2x4 it would
would reach.
so the top of the handrail went all the way from post to post, no problem. But underneath that handrail, where you had your 2x4 where the pickets are attached, it was about uh, I'd say an inch and 3/4, 2 inches short. So it wasn't like hey, I cut on the wrong side of the line,
Yeah, it was.
and the 2x4. It was like short, and they just stuck a chunk of 2x4 in there and just glued it. They use like liquid nails, and that's what was
The
holding
the
the two
rail
by
on it.
four. And it wasn't like one. It was like what was it? A 16. It's a big deck, right? It was like a 400 and something square foot deck. And I'm looking at all the rails because I walk up and it was a fairly new deck. It was built less than a year ago, and I'm walking up, and I'll usually just kind of jiggle the rail a little bit as I'm walking up,
Yeah.
check the handrails, make sure that they're secured, and they're not. And I start, as I'm looking at the square footage and looking at the rail, I'm like, that's weird. That looks like there's a cut in that two by four. And so I go over there, and yeah, it's an honest cut, and it looked like somebody had caulked it in
Oh,
to
gee.
hide that it was there. And then when I looked at it, uh, I'm like, well, crap, it looks like a beige, yellowy caulk, and then I'm sitting there going, I
Yeah.
wonder if that's liquid nails. And so the empty lot next door to it is empty because there's no new construction there
Yeah.
yet. There are like tubes of liquid nails, and I guarantee you they were the tubes that whoever had built that deck for this new homeowner, it's a new house, probably caulked it in and just threw them into the empty lot, hoping no one saw it.
And then you're
And,
gonna
and it just
power wash.
amazed me, like, here's a brand new composite floor deck with wood railings, and all the rails wouldn't pass code. I don't know how they passed code, but if somebody came out there and looked at that, they'd be like, hey, a kid leans on this rail, they're they're likely going to fall off this deck.
Yeah, and then you're gonna go and pressure wash it and try to clean it and stuff and all that, and then it's really gonna start showing.
Well, and and I pointed it out to him. I was like, look, I'm not pointing this out to be disrespectful or anything, but just so that you're aware, in case you're not aware, these rails are not connected. Like the top two by six on the top of the handrail is good. It goes post to post and it's sturdied on there. But your two by fours, top and bottom, none of them are the exact length of post to post. They didn't cut them, or but I don't know how they did it. And it wasn't just one section. It was like uh, two, three, four, like six sections like that. And so, and I pointed out to him, I was like, hey, don't mean any disrespect. I don't know who built this deck. I don't know if you built it or whoever it was, but
Yeah,
just so you know, those two by fours aren't secured besides the two by six on the top. The bottom is not secure, the top is not secure. And if you have kids, a big dog or something, and they go chasing after a squirrel or
you're gonna push
a
off it.
bird, they're probably going to go through the rail,
Yep.
or at least knock the handrail or the deck rail off to where it's broken. So I told him, I was like, hey, I can recommend a handful of deck builders who can come and look at this, but whoever built this, I'd go contact them and let them know that there's
They
something
got
wrong
fix it.
here.
Yeah. I we've done a handful of decks, but I pretty much just stay away from decks because, well, the one thing is anything over 4 feet, then you have to change your insurance because you're over four
Yeah,
feet tall. But it's basically like a lot of especially like a lot of the landscape companies in Omaha, I'll go and bid a job and they're like, well, this company came in this much lower than me. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, well, send the bid over.
yeah,
And I get the bid and there's not one word of fence in the name of the company. It's so and so landscape or whatever, lawn care and I'm like, that's fine with it, but I'm like, I tell them I'm like, it's basically like kind of need to stay in your own lane kind of thing, like stick to what you know.
yeah,
And there's a lot of companies in Omaha now that are basically trying to do everything short of building a house.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, I understand you got to do what you got to do to make ends meet and pay bills and stuff, but in the long run, it's kind of hurting the customer because they're going to end up paying more in the long run to fix it than to actually get it installed the correct way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We run into that, or I've seen that more often. Started last year. Um, you know, there in previous years, I'd go to Sherwin-Williams, and there would be an occasion where a painter, Roman painting, whether it was. Um, names aren't coming off the top of my head now, but they would ask me, it was like, hey, how busy are you for deck staining? Because I've got a couple of customers that want their decks stained, and we don't stain because we just focus on painting, and that's our niche and that's our
Yeah.
craft. And can I get a card from you, and I'll send them your way or give them your information. If they want to call you, they'll call you. And then in 2024, I noticed fewer people were doing that. They were asking, how busy are you, or are you taking on new referrals? And more of them were now staining because the painting aspect, there were either an influx of new painters that were doing what you're mentioning, where uh, what is it, 9 holes landscaping. Maybe it's
9.
called 9 holes. I can't remember, but it's like nine something holes. They
Oh,
do. They focus on
oh,
landscaping and lawn care and stuff.
all
But
9 yards.
yes, and
Yeah.
they're now like building fences. They're
Yep.
building decks. They're painting. They just expanded
The whole 9 yards.
reach of
That's the
what
name
their
of the company.
services are. And eh, eh, you know, all power to them if they're doing things right and everything like that. But at the same time, how many of those companies are willing to reach out to you or reach out to Sean King or someone in the industry who teaches and educates and
Yeah.
learn how to do things the right way? You know,
Yeah.
we have a
I
young
mean,
kid here in our town who young, eager, hungry, uh, but he's in that mindset of, well, I can do it cheap.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you can do it cheap, but are you doing it right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm giving them what they're paying for. Yes, I agree. You're giving them what they're paying
Yeah.
for, but if if you go out and you attach a handrail on a 2x4 with a 2.5 inch nail, uh, and then months later you hear that that customer fell off their deck because you had maybe half an inch gripping onto that post. And when they fell off their deck, it was because you didn't use the proper nail length or the proper screw length. Do you
Yep.
really want to be like, you're conscious? Do you want to know, like grandma fell off the deck and died because
Yep.
you're doing it cheap and you're trying to get as much money as you can to get by and use, the least biggest screw you had to because it would save you a few cents per,
Yeah.
per can of screws or whatever.
I can't remember if it was last year or might have been a couple years ago. There was something like that that happened in Omaha where there was like a big. I don't know if it was too many people on the deck,
Mm-hmm.
but they found out that the ledger board wasn't attached to the house right, and that was the
Yeah.
main reason the deck just fell away from the
Yeah.
house because it couldn't handle the weight.
Wasn't that like a family gathering that they were having and
Yeah,
like
I
the whole
can't
deck
remember.
just,
Yeah, it fell off. It just pulled away from the house.
yeah. Yeah, and they'll find out like insurance. And that's what I was trying to explain to him is like, you pay for insurance to cover yourself. Well, I don't
Yep.
have insurance. Well,
Oh, there.
there you
Yeah.
go. There's one
Red
problem you have.
red flag.
Um, but insurance does not. They want their premiums paid every month. But
Yep.
when it comes time to pay out, they'll find anything and everything that they can to prove that it's not their fault.
Yeah.
But like Justin, the deck builder, who was negligent and not attaching, instead of using a leg bolt to attach the deck to the house, maybe I skipped out on a few of them, and so now I'm getting sued for negligently building this deck that I knew was improper, and now I'm at fault, and they're going to sue me to get as much as they can, so that they're going to get from me to pay out what they're owing the people who had the damage done to their house, their deck, livelihoods, medical bills, whatever, so that they're not paying out the full amount. They're going to go get milk you for everything you're worth.
Yeah, and I mean that's like I just did a bid for uh, a customer that their son actually lost control of his car and went through somebody's fence on the way to school,
Mm.
and the insurance company, it was just a barbed wire fence, took out a couple posts, and not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it totaled his car, and there was actually a metal pipe that went through his car, and he's lucky it didn't get worse because it would have killed him probably, the metal pipe. But the insurance company, they emailed me Uh, Either the beginning of this week or the end of last week. And they're like, can you give us an itemized breakdown of everything? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, no, this is my price to do the job is this, like, it's this. And they're like, well, can you at least give us a material list of what you're replacing so that we can make sure we're on the same page? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, then they came back and said something about, well, how many hours? They wanted to know, like, how many hours, how many guys,
Yeah.
what equipment. And I'm like, listen, we're showing up with 150, $200,000 in trucks, trailers, tools, equipment, mini skid, all. I'm like, to do a $2,000 job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, we're showing up. I'm like, it shouldn't be a question at all. Just, you gonna approve it or you're not? I'm like, because we got all this money invested and it's like I bid it for so many hours, and I'm like, we're gonna either make it or break it on it. Basically, like, I bid it for this many hours. If it takes 2 hours longer, we're not making any money
Yeah.
because I know about how long it's going to take, and I'll add like an hour just to be safe, give or take, and
Mm-hmm.
that it. That's one of the things around Omaha is a lot of companies are bidding by the foot,
Mm-hmm.
and I quit doing that 3-4 years ago because I actually did the math, and in the long run, on especially on large jobs, you're losing money,
Yeah.
uh, and because you bid it by the foot, but if you say you bid it by the foot, but then you're there for a day and a half when you didn't plan on it.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
happened and you weren't planning on it. But like I'll go like for like especially wood posts, we'll go and show up with three guys, the mini skid or little beaver or whatever, and dig holes. And depending on the ground and the terrain and stuff, it's roughly 8 to 12 minutes a hole, depending on like how the job goes, basically. And so I just kind of, you got to use your best judgment, and that's where experience comes in to play. Doing it over the years, is you find out, you're like, you go to certain neighborhoods and you're like, oh, this neighborhood's going to suck to dig in. I've done this before because it's
Yeah.
like built on top of a landfill, or they used whatever they could find to build that neighborhood, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And once the houses are built, everything looks great, but you go down a foot and you're hitting garbage.
Yeah.
But and then you take that kind of, you take, say it's going to be 30 holes at 8 minutes a hole, that's 240 minutes. Well, you divide 240 minutes by however many guys are there in the hours, and that's how you bid the job. And then you take, say you're going to be there for 10 hours. Well, you got to cover your business overhead for 10 hours. So then I take the 10 hours, and that's how I get my pricing.
Yeah.
And you got to know your numbers. And I mean, I got it down to, especially on wood, we got it down to like just about the penny. Like, I know how much one single nail costs. I mean, I'm sure you got it down to like how much an ounce of stain costs, probably. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so some people may think that's super tedious to do that. I don't.
once you,
I mean, you got to know. So I was just looking at who's all watching. We have a bunch of folks watching, which is great.
yeah, I saw
John
a lot.
Cummings out of Indiana, Jordan, Taylor, Stanton Frank, man, I hope you're doing some ice fishing. Uh, Kenny Spencer, my sister-in-law, Amber, Kip,
Yeah, Kip,
Steven, down in Louisiana, Dan, Jesse. Thanks for all watching. Hopefully you're enjoying the conversation, the info.
Kip
Um,
was
Edwin
actually
was
how I
watching
started
earlier.
fencing.
First Place Finishing is watching. So Edwin can attest to this. I'm hoping to have him on Monday, and we're going to talk the employer aspect or employee aspect of working for an owner operator. And one of the things that we implemented a couple of years ago was in our uh, monthly meetings when we go over how the month went. Did we reach our goals? Did we reach our revenue income? Uh, we let our guys, and of course you know me. We have right now we have two full timers who work for us, and then I've got a couple of boys of mine who work for me in between school during the summer. And one of the things that we started doing in our business meetings, we take a day, we go out and eat, and we try to have fun. And they're on the clock, so they're not missing out on a day's work, uh, but they're having a good time. We're growing beyond just employer employee relationships, right? We're trying to show them that we're bought into their success as well as them being bought into our success. And one of the things that we've done is we've shared with them, like, hey, we did, $35,000 worth of work this month. And, we reached our goals for bonuses and everything, and, give them the good news right up front. And here's our expenses. This is how much we spent on stain. This is how much we spent on
Yeah.
brushes. This is how much we spent on labor, taxes,
Hmm.
uh, all the operating expenses that, you you go through. And so they were able to see, uh, when they're at a job and I already left to go to another job or whatever, and they're collecting a check, it's not just getting a $3,500 check and sitting there going, man, we just spent like 3 hours here. And he might have spent 3 hours washing it and prepping it. And so in 6 hours, he made $3,500 and he's only paid me, $30 an hour for 3 hours. It kind of gave them a better view
Yeah.
of, hey, there's marketing expenses that you don't even see or have any idea that
Yeah.
goes into it. There's workers' comp insurance. There's business insurance. There's unemployment insurance. There's taxes that we're paying. There's
Yeah.
all these other expenses. So it helped our employees understand that instead of, like you mentioned, the cost of a screw or a nail, they're realizing that that brush that they would normally throw away is 13 to 15 bucks.
Yeah.
And 13 to $15 might not sound like a lot, but if you're doing 3 standing jobs a day, that's 3 brushes a day. And if you have 3 people on the job, now 15
$100.
bucks a person, it's 45 bucks at the end of the day. And now you're multiplying it by three.
Mhm.
And now you're losing $140, 150 bucks, or even more with taxes.
Yep.
And you multiply that by 5 days, you're now closer to a large chunk of money.
Mhm.
And it could mean, do we make our bonus or do we not make our bonus? You know, so it kind of gave them an incentive to realize the the cost of materials plays a factor into them accomplishing their goal of making some extra money.
Yeah.
And
I'm,
they're not just throwing things away anymore because they realize, you know, yeah, this tarp's dirty and it's looks nasty, but we can still use it because it's
yep.
gonna get stained on. It's gonna get wet. It's gonna get nasty, and that thing costs $65.
Yep.
And if we
I'm,
throw away 10 tarps a month, that's $650. That might mean me getting $1,000 bonus, or I get a $350 bonus.
yeah. And that's
So
one of the things I'm trying to work on all that right now is like trying to figure out a way to implement that kind of like a bonus for the guys to like I let them in on like I'm like, hey, it costs this much a day just to come and answer the phone. And they're like,
yeah,
really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hey, so when I'm telling you move your butt, like let's go. Like I'm like sitting there for like I mean what was it? Monday? I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday. Because I only have 2 guys that work for me, and
hmm
then the girls in the office help. I honestly, I couldn't do it without them now.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I mean, you know how it is. I mean, you can't be in 3 places at once. Uh,
No, or have a work life balance.
yeah, I mean it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would literally. I mean, I'm at the shop right now, but I would literally sleep at the shop if I didn't have anybody helping me in the office.
yeah, yep.
I mean,
And I'd be the same way. I've done that. Where when I first started off, my older two, well, I guess my oldest 2 kids suffered because uh, the business was life. And they understood that, like dad's trying to make this work,
yeah,
and by working as hard as he's working, he's able to provide a roof over our heads. He's able to feed us and support us in the things that we're doing. But those things can't replace
time.
sitting down with your kids
Yeah.
and talking to them, giving them a hug, and reading them a story to go to sleep at night, or uh, them coming home uh, after football practice, and they just had like a horrible experience, or they played like crap and they got yelled at and this and that, and you're not there to give them, that hug or that tap of encouragement, or so there are things like that. And if you don't have a good grasp on your work, your what is it, your a good balance in work life, uh, a business can overtake your time to
Yeah.
where, like you mentioned, you could sleep at the shop and still feel like you didn't accomplish everything you
That
wanted to because,
that was one of the big things we did. What was it? 2 years ago, I actually built the office in my shop
mhm,
because I I would I mean it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, and at the time the office was 10 steps away from where I was sleeping, and so I'd go
yeah,
in there. I mean, and I was literally like 4 in the morning. I'm working on numbers, doing estimates, whatever, and I would literally just I was working 24/7. I mean, I mean, you know how it goes. You still feel like you work 24/7,
yeah,
but I mean,
yeah,
but that was one of the things I wanted to do was get the office out of my home because well, I didn't want to come home from putting up fence all day and then turn around and I got 4 hours of paperwork to do, and then you blink and you got to go sleep.
yeah, yeah,
Which mean, I mean, it still happens from time to time, but it's not as uh, often as it used to be. Because like
yeah.
I'll come in, it's I go home and I spend time with my girlfriend, the dog, and the dogs attack me when I walk in the door. But
Yeah,
uh,
they miss dad.
oh yeah, especially we got a 10-month-old puppy, and uh, I named him Picket, like Fence
Hmm.
Picket,
Yeah.
and he I walk well. I don't take him to the shop anymore because uh, he got really scared from all the noise and
Hmm.
stuff, so I quit bringing him down here. But I'll, I'll walk in the back door, and I can't do. I mean, he hears me pulling in the driveway.
Yeah,
And as soon as I walk in the door, it's time to go for a walk.
yeah,
Like you probably can hear him through the neighborhood screaming,
hmm,
saying, "Let's go." I mean,
yeah,
but I mean, and I enjoy it. I mean, it's one of the things I look forward to doing it, and then just going home and relaxing and watching TV, or just even like uh just not work related
yeah,
stuff. I mean,
yeah,
watching a movie with my girlfriend, whatever.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
And it's super important for mental health issues,
yeah.
for your own
Oh, sure.
sanity,
Yeah.
because yeah, I mean, a lot of I don't know if it's a misconception or what it might be, because there's a lot of folks who just assume you're a small business owner, you must be making a ton of
Oh
money.
yeah. It-
You're living the life, you've got all this, discretionary income, and you're not working crazy hours, you're not doing, blah blah blah, whatever impersonation or impression that they have about small business owners. And what most people don't realize is, like you mentioned, the amount of work.
yeah.
I was messaging you the other day, and you had about the advertising guy,
Oh
and
God,
how
that
you had
guy.
just gotten back from ice melting, and you were building a fence, and it's like, come on, dude, like, give me a break. I need
hmm
I need some time to just take a piss and
I
not have
just
to worry about, if is it outside my truck, or because
that
being
guy
an
was
owner
way too
operator,
aggressive.
like we both met, it can take over your life. You can
Yep.
spend 24 hours a day working on your business, calling, emailing back, paying bills, doing payroll, trying to do some social media
Yep.
posts to generate new leads and new business. Do we have supplies for tomorrow's job, for the upcoming jobs? And
Yeah.
before you know it, it might seem like a few tasks could take hours to do. And then if you're working, uh, you know, I know you get up early in the morning and you get to the shop, and you start off early, and then you come back when you're done. and you add those extra hours, it could be you leaving the house at night because it's still dark outside early morning,
Yep.
and you're coming back at night because it's dark outside.
Especially
And
in the
then
winter. Yeah.
you eat some food, take a shower, and you'll be lucky to catch a few. If you catch a show, and that's if you don't fall asleep watching whatever you're trying to watch.
Yeah.
Because you're probably
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah. I'm my girlfriend, she does that all the time to me. She'll be like, "You want to watch a movie?" And I'm like, "I will attempt it."
Yeah. Yeah, it better
I'm like,
not be like the what's that the Note. I think it's the
"No,
Note or something like that. It's like one of those love stories that
the
all
Notebook."
women like to watch, and you sit
Uh,
there and you're like, whoa.
yeah.
Or I just start snoring. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
I'm in the theater, if I'm at home. Everybody knows I'm asleep because they could hear me.
And they almost made it worse in the movie theaters with the comfy reclining
Yeah,
seats now.
yeah,
I have to like make sure I'm not reclined all the way or I'm gonna fall asleep.
yeah.
But
Well, I think your girlfriend is watching, Ashley,
no, that's
or maybe
she
that's not your girlfriend. That's
no, Ashley
yep.
works
She
in the
says,
office.
"Aw shucks, thanks, Chris. Teamwork makes the dream work."
Oh, I can't see that stuff
Yeah, and
on
then
my side.
Jay's watching from Florida. He used to live here in Bellevue. Jay Ser. Robbie Presswood is watching, and then first place finishing. I think we mentioned him earlier. They're watching also.
No,
Um,
actually, she's the one that works in the office for me, and I got
okay,
another girl that helps me in the office. And
nice.
uh, Tasha, I thought I saw her.
Tasha, yeah,
That's my girlfriend.
yep.
Yeah,
She was
she's.
on here earlier.
I don't know
Yep,
if
I
she's
think I.
still here or not, but
Yep, she was on. She was on earlier.
but uh,
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the biggest thing is like a lot of people think that all the small business owners that they're making money hand over fist, and I'm like, no,
No,
we're
no.
running,
And,
we're just
and,
trying not
and
to be
all
run
power to
noodles.
those who have gotten to that point where they have, the they're live. Excuse me, they're living the life that we want to try to get to or seek to get to.
Oh
I
yeah,
was talking. I talked to Matt Warner as much as I get a chance to, and he was telling me uh, about one of his business ventures that went bankrupt. You know, and when you hear about that story of what happened with that business, and you see what he's doing today with these other businesses, uh, it could show you both sides of the story. We talked about Sean King. I'll never forget sitting down at a restaurant with him and a few other deck staining business owners, and he was sharing with us his experiences of having his own staining business, and is one of his staining trailers ending up in a pool in a residential
yep,
neighborhood.
yep.
Not an empty trailer of
Oh
stain, but a full trailer of stain.
yeah,
And and how he was a couple of blocks away, and they could hear the smashing and cracking of material. And he was just like telling us, he in the back of his mind, he's just like, please don't let that be. You know,
hmm
hopefully that's not what I think it might be. And then getting that dreaded phone call,
yeah.
hey,
Throw the trailer at
our
the bottom
trailer
of the pool.
we thought was locked up, and it rolled down the street, and it wasn't even the job that they were working at. So now you're contacting a homeowner who you're not doing any work with,
Yep,
and letting them know that, hey, if they're not home, by the way, my trailer just smashed through your fence, that we're more than happy, we're going to replace it and fix it for you better than it probably was in the first place. But oh, by the way, there's also a 10-foot trailer in the bottom of your pool leaking
yep,
out gas, oil, stain, whatever chemicals, and
yeah. I heard
um,
that story multiple times, and
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that was the end of his staining career.
yeah. Or he told us a story about, I think, a big commercial job that they were staining, I think at a HOA or at a hospital, and on the other side of that fence was multiple high-end vehicles like Porsches and Jaguars
Oh
that were
no!
just glistening with that nice shiny coat of stain, you know.
Holy
And
crap! I bet
so
that was
it, but
expensive.
but you look, yeah, you look at Sean today, right? And we see the success that he's gotten himself
Yeah.
into, uh, the hats that he's wearing, and people look up to him for his tools, for his knowledge, his experience, and they see all the successes. Um, but people don't, or they don't take the time to talk or find out, like, hey, how did you get here? Where did you come from? You know, uh, you had a business that was on the verge of collapsing. You had to deal with your wife dying of cancer
Yep.
and having to become a sheriff's deputy
Yep.
to pay for bills and do medical and raise kids as a single dad, because your wife was constantly in the hospital and
Yeah.
then eventually passed away.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and then all the things that went. We're so quick to see the success here and now. Just think that everybody you know is making hundreds of thousands of dollars and have a bunch of discretionary income and are going golfing or doing this or doing that, and some are, and some
Yeah.
are some are struggling, some are working job to job.
Yeah.
I was that way. There was many years where I thought I had a great year until I did the books and then found out I made no money,
Yep. I know
and
exactly how that goes.
yeah, yeah. But I'll never forget a customer who, well off to do lady, UNO tenured professor, had me out there standing at her fence, and I got done, went and knocked on the door, and I asked her, do you want to pay me now or do you want to mail a check? And she's like, nope, just write it off as charitable contribution. And I
What?
kind of like took a step back, thought, and I was like, did I just what did you say? She's like, yeah, just write it off as a charitable contribution. You business owners, you guys have more
Oh,
money than you know what to
oh,
do
I
with.
would.
And so just put me down as a charitable contribution.
I would.
Oh man, you talk about getting hot.
Yeah,
And
I would have
uh
been pissed.
yeah, the kind, respectful Justin just kind of like, listen, lady,
Yep.
I'll give charity to who I want to give charity to, and you're not going to tell me that, uh, and then come to find out, like, I was steaming off, stomping, walking back to my car, and here comes I can't remember if it was a landscaper or an irrigation guy. He comes rolling up and he sees me. He's like, "She's home," and I was like, "Yeah, she's home, all right." And he's like, "She paid you?" And I was like, "No, she just told me to do it." He's like, "That's what I'm here for. I'm doing my
Uh,
my duty to come knock on the door to try to collect." And he's like, "And if you're thinking of putting a lien on her house, good luck, because there's already 10 or 12 people ahead of you, from
yep.
roofers to landscapers to you name it." And I learned, like, that day, uh, some people are good. Some people will pay you. Some people will tell you, "Hey, I owe you." It might be a week later, but I'm going to send you out your check. And some people
Hmm.
won't tell you they're going to pay you, and you'll wait 3 weeks to get your check, or you have to call, you have to visit, you have to call, and
Yep.
you know, show up with the nice face, and then show up with like the firm,
Hmm.
damn it, you better pay me, or
Yep.
I
Yep.
see you
Yeah.
at Walmart. Trust me, you're going to get run over by a cart, and it's not going to be
I
one
had
cart.
I had that happen. It was the I can't remember. I think it was like the third or fourth job I ever did as Done Right Fence.
Mm-hmm.
And her job, it was in 2009. It was I did the first, I think, two or three jobs I nailed up with a hammer. Me and my dad did. And uh, uh I it, I said, screw it. On this wood job, I'm buying a gas air compressor. I'm getting a nail gun,
Yeah.
a framer gun, a coil gun. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And uh, I took her check, bought the material, and uh, compressor, nail guns, everything ready to go. Put her fence up. And then it was like from the time I got the deposit check to finished, and she gave me the completion check that day, I was like within a week.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day I got a letter in the mail saying, this is back before checks were instant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got a letter in the mail saying the deposit check bounced. And I was like, ah, crap.
Yeah.
And uh, she wouldn't answer the phone, nothing. Uh, wouldn't answer the door.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it was like 2 weeks later, we got another letter in the mail saying the final check bounced. And I'm like, oh, this is going great.
Yeah.
And so ran over there. She wouldn't answer the phone. Come to find out, uh, this is the same time that the Brass Furniture Mart built the one in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was getting, nobody knew this until the court date happened and uh, everything happened, basically came out in public. It was on the news and everything. She was getting a divorce from her husband that lived in
Mm.
Denver. And uh, if I remember correctly, she was writing checks to try to flip the house and get out and sell it as fast as she could. And then she was getting in over her head. So she was going to Brass Furniture Mart, writing furniture with checks
Wow.
that same day or the next day, driving to Kansas City, and they were giving her cash in return. And
Wow.
she was like 185 grand in bad check fraud.
Wow.
And I went to to this day, and I don't know if she's still in jail or not. Nobody got paid
Yeah.
from it. And I think there was 4 or 5 contractors that actually went under because of her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I can drive you right to the house. It's on the corner of 33rd and Curtis in North
Yep.
Omaha. And the fence is still standing, but it, I mean, it looks in way worse shape. The house does now than it
Yeah.
ever did. But
Yeah.
but I think there was, if I remember, right, $185,000 in bad check fraud she wrote, and 4 or 5 contractors went under. And when I went to the court date, I think there was a dozen contractors in the courtroom just for her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's been my personal experience with liens. That if a person's gonna not pay you, and you spend the time, the money to go to the courthouse to do the lien, to process the paperwork, to to do your due justice, and you get there and there's more than one lien already on the house. It's like
you're
we
might as well,
don't,
you're done.
knock on wood, we haven't had a customer jip us in 2 years, I would say. And part of that has been, um, we've accepted that not every job is for us. There's
Yeah.
times, I used to be, uh, my mentality was the more work I had on my schedule, the better the business
Yep.
was doing, and it
Yeah.
didn't matter the amount of work. I wasn't looking at the or not the amount of work. I was looking at the quantity and not the quantitative amount that we were under, right? So if we had 30 jobs on the books, to me it was like, yes, man, we got like a month and a half to 2 months worth of work to go, and then we weren't bidding them correctly, or things like that. So uh, having lesser jobs that pay more and are more profitable is better than having 30 jobs and you're losing money, or
Yeah.
or even breaking even. And then, like you mentioned, it's the same way in the staining world. I can go to a job and we can calculate it's going to take us 10 hours to wash, prep, and stain this job and be completed, and break even or have a little bit of a profit margin on it. But if rain comes in and we had to go there and we started and it started raining, now we're going to have to come back a second time. We're spending gas, we're spending
Yep.
labor to come back. Those extra few hours on there can make or break you in a year.
Yep.
If you're not calculating things over the span of a time.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've come to learn through. I don't know if you remember. I think it was 2 years ago. There was a roofer in. I think he was out of Valley, Nebraska. Small roofing company, did a roof for a gal over 100 and I want to say it's like 192nd and F Street area. Pretty nice
Hmm.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And she stiffed him, like, on same kind of concept that you're talking about. The deposit check didn't go through. They had already put the roof on. Just it started ignoring him, wouldn't pay him, and she went out of town. and he went to a bar and started drinking. And one of the guys at the bar, I guess, made the comment, "I'd go rip that roof off. If she hasn't
Oh,
paid, I'll go take that roof back." And this guy, not
yeah,
thinking straight, went to that house like in the middle of the night
started ripping
and started ripping
the roof off.
shingles off the house, right? And they were out of town. The neighbor called the cops because
Mhm.
there's a random guy on our neighbor's roof, and he's destroying the house. And I think he got like 20 years for
Yeah, I
uh,
heard about that.
yeah, trying to repossess his roof.
Yeah,
And
that's the crappy thing about Nebraska, and I think most states in the United States. Once like you install or do
mhm,
anything, you like I go install a fence. Once I install it legally, I don't own the material,
yeah,
even if they haven't paid for it. And I'm like, to me, there's got to be something that can be done about that. I don't think there can be or not. I mean, I know there's some people that have it written in the contracts that even in some of the like there's a few in Nebraska that I know that have it written in their contracts that the material is property of so and so fence company or whoever
mhm,
until the job is completed. But I even talked to my lawyer about it a few times, and he's like, in the state of Nebraska, you can put whatever you want in wording; it don't matter.
yeah,
As soon as you install it,
it's
it's there. It's
theirs.
there.
Yep.
And we
And then if
actually
you go
had,
rip it off, and you're now destroying their property.
yep. And we had a customer last year uh, that it was over in Council Bluffs, and I gave him the bid in April. He didn't sign the contract until I can't remember the exact dates, May something, and I told him it'd be I think it was 12 weeks or something,
Hmm.
and we ended up installing it 2 days after the day I told him we'd be there, and he was there. He was happy with it, fine with it. I mean, told us great job, blah blah blah. And then we go to get paid, and we send him the invoice, and he's like, "Well, you made me wait 3 months to get paid. You can wait 3 months to get paid." I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" I'm like,
Yeah.
and uh, I called him a couple of times, and then one time he actually called the office one time and was screaming and yelling at Ashley and the girl that helps me in the office. And Ashley called me, and she's like, she was shaking, she said, because of the way he was talking to her and screaming
Sure.
and yelling.
Yeah.
And I called him, and he's yelling and cussing and screaming at me. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'll stick my lawyer on you. And my lawyer sent the lien threat letter, like, we're going to do this if you don't pay.
Yeah.
And from the time I called the lawyer to the time he paid was 72 hours. I'm like, that was quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, and that it never went nowhere. Like, I mean, we have liens out on people right now, but
Hmm.
I mean, there's only so much you can do. But I wish there was. I've said it for years. There's got to be a way to do like Google reviews for customers,
Hmm.
where you can don't work for this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't. I know there's other people that have said the same thing or do the same thing, but nobody's been able to like figure out the correct way of going about it. Because like, I mean, there's some customers that we've done jobs for that I'm like, I never want to come back here again.
Yeah.
I'm like I did a bid for a lady, and the first time, like, it'll be the third time we've done work for her. And
Mhm.
the first time was fine. The second time it was kind of shaky. The third time she was just a complete 180. I'm like, holy crap, like what is going on?
Yeah.
And it was like I was like, don't ever want to come back.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, yep, that one's going on the blacklist. Like, don't, like,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
I wish there was
Because
a Google
then,
review for customers.
yep. Because you'll get the opposite too, where customers have dealt with contractors who
Yeah,
sniff them. And, we run across a lot of, when we ask for a deposit, for an example, you'll get, uh, people will start putting up red flags.
yeah,
Well, I gave so and so contractor a certain amount of deposit and they never showed back
yeah,
up, and this and that. Um, But then
I
again, those same people can then go on Google and
yep.
warn other customers, like, hey, AAA contracting took $500 as a deposit, never came back. And at least that customer has a warning of, hey, AAA has been notorious to do this. And here's 10 other people who've had the same experiences where their money has been taken. And like you mentioned, there's nothing, for you or I or anybody else to sit there and go, hey, be careful with so and so customer because we did work for them. We gave them, a contract deposit amount and da 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 da, and this is what they did
Uh-huh.
to give people a heads up, or they stiffed us and they've stiffed so and so and they've stiffed so and so, so that you're not, because eventually that call is going to come in to contractor ABC, to come put up a fence or to stain the fence or to do
Yep.
whatever. And we have no idea that they owe you thousands of dollars and they may owe the landscaper thousands of dollars
Yeah.
or written you bad checks, over the years or over the months. And
That,
we're going to probably experience the same experience because there's no information out there to warn somebody that these people are like that.
there that's like, especially in like snow removal and stuff, it gets really bad with like uh the national property management companies.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be there's one that's really bad at that there's it's on all the like the snow forums and stuff, and people are like, have you anybody work for this company? And it's just instantly like 30 people don't do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, but that's
Well,
one
and
good
that's a
thing about
good thing.
the,
I wonder if maybe that's something in Omaha that needs to happen is like a contractor's,
yeah, that's what I was thinking about doing, was
yeah,
starting like
like Facebook page or
yeah.
something where like warning you about, because there are, like you said, like management companies out there, national management companies to even regional, who have big projects, for landscapers, for lawn care, snow removal. Um, like I was talking to Michael Dudley, and he does one
Huh?
for a big apartment complex where it takes months and months to get a payment.
Yep, I know, Mike.
Yeah.
I've done some jobs. I did his wall. I did the fronts on his house
Yep.
for him. I redid the
Yep.
fronts on
For
him.
his fence and stuff.
Yeah, and there was one apartment complex over in Ralston. We did some repair work on a fence, and I mean, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, but I mean, there's so many contractors in Omaha that you have to watch out for. Like, if I've never heard of that, like it happened, shoot, a month or two ago. Somebody got a hold of me saying they were so and so contracting company, and they're like, "Hey, we need this fence put up." And well, I looked them up, and instantly on Google and BBB, it was just red flag after red flag
Mm-hmm.
after red flag, and I was like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah.
I need the jobs, but I'm good.
Yep.
I don't
So a
want to
good
deal with it.
question that first place finishing asks is, how do you know, or how do you now protect yourself from people like that nowadays for both of your businesses, as far as like people that we feel aren't going to pay or who haven't paid? What's
The
one way that you found that you
the
can protect yourself
the,
from situations like that?
the best thing is you got to make sure that they like my contract when I first started done right, it was one small paragraph and a signature.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's almost three full pages, 11 initials, a signature, like check mark here, which option you want. Like, it's just make sure all the I's and T's and everything's dotted and crossed. And uh, but then, and the one line is on our contract is uh, after so many days, there's this much interest. Like, after
Mm-hmm.
30 days, we're gonna start charging you more. So you got
Yeah.
30 days to pay it. And uh, if it's like, as long as they're like in contact with me, I won't. I might, if they're like, hey, we're gonna pay it 32 days late, I'm like, I'm not gonna worry about. It's not,
Yeah.
as long as there's communication. But there's times where we've had customers where it's like 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and I'm like, I haven't had any communication, no nothing from anybody, and I'm like, okay, you're getting interest,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's one thing I'm gonna start this year is not like I'm still I'm the nicest person you'll ever meet, but I'm not gonna be as nice if that makes sense. Like I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like, okay, because I've let people take advantage of me in the past, and I'm trying to not let that happen as much. But
Sure.
I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
but I mean,
Yeah.
it,
And yeah, it's wording. Words have meaning. And if you have, I mean, your line of business compared to my line of business is very different as far as the amount of money and materials and everything that you have
oh yeah,
invested going into a job. Um, for us, as far as a staining business goes, is communication is everything. Like you
hmm
mentioned, like if they're willing to let you know, like, hey Chris, this is Mrs. Paulson, and you came and built. I know my bill is due. I'm planning on sending you out a check on the 31st, or whatever it
yeah,
might be. And for you as a business owner, that's huge, because now you're not wondering, they're
hmm
communicating. Um, and if they start going silent and not answering calls and not returning calls and texts, or I
yeah,
mean, we have so many different ways of communicating now
mm,
that if somebody starts going silent on me, then it's like a red flag right away.
yeah,
Um, One thing that we've done is, like I mentioned earlier, is not every job is for us. And
hmm
if a job sounds either too good to be true, or what's the saying? If it quacks like a duck and it flies like a duck and it sounds like a duck, then it's probably a duck.
yeah,
If there's a customer who that we meet with and we're providing the bid, and during that conversation or that those steps, if it starts throwing up some red flags to us, it's not worth us even dealing with or pursuing, because
hmm
if it's being troublesome at the beginning without us even being their contractor, then it's only going to get worse as time goes on with us
yeah.
being their contractor.
There, there's jobs that I've gone to bid and uh, like a customer is like, well, we need this, and this done, and or you can already tell by like their body language or
Mm-hmm.
their demeanor, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna bid this completely out of sight, so if it does go through, it's worth the headache, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
I mean, it's just kind of another way to protect yourself. Because like
Yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
but I mean,
If your spidey senses start telling you that
hmm
something's not right, it's probably a good thing to listen. And
yep,
I mean, it's tough, right? I know John Cummings earlier was talking about how he's a job to job kind of guy, and I've been there, and it's hard to turn down jobs. It's hard to um, not take jobs when they're available, but and it's easier said than done. But in my personal experience, if you feel those spidey senses tell you that there's something not right here, um, I call it the spirit. Some people call it the spidey senses. Somebody calls it, the hair on your
yeah,
back rising, that, trying to warn you. Uh, 9 out of 10 times,
you're
and I
right.
might be wrong that one time,
Yeah,
but 9 out of 10 times, it's better to just walk away
yep,
and not have a job for another week and
hmm
have to tighten your belt another latch if you really need to.
yeah,
But you won't regret it as time goes on. You'll appreciate that you walked away. And like I said, it's tough. It's hard to do. It's easier said than done. But for those
yep,
who've gone through those experiences, if I could go back and not accept that job and deal with all the headaches, and I can only imagine for like a fence builder, because all the materials you're buying, all the
hmm
labor, the equipment, all the stuff.
yep,
If you could go back on 9 out of the 10 jobs that you did that you wish you wouldn't have done, you'd have a nice chunk of change, right?
yeah.
That you
Well,
didn't.
that's one of the things I um, started work on a couple years ago was having a spreadsheet for everything, and in the past 6 months, we've gotten it pretty well like tightened up and stuff where like we can just punch in what is material and labor and everything, and
Hmm.
it'll just be like spit us out a number and be like, here you go. And
Yeah.
like, and then from from that number, I'll be like, okay, well, this customer is going to be a pain, so I'm going to give them that extra charge kind of
Yep.
thing. 'Cause,
Yep. So when we full reveal, all right. If some of you got caught in this, you got caught in this. When we schedule our schedules out, we try to fit. We'll schedule as far out as we can schedule, and then we
Mhm,
get customers who will call at the last minute. And little Susie has a graduation party that she has coming up, and we've known about this graduation party since the day she entered high school because if you've lived in the same house for the last 10 years of your kid and you know they're going to graduate from your local high school, you know graduation's going to come. And they'll
mhm,
wait till like 2 weeks before graduation party and they'll call up and they'll say, hey, I need my deck and fence washed and stained. You come and do it in next week because I need it
mhm,
done by next week. Well, yeah, I'll come out and give you an estimate and I'll tell you right off the bat, hey, we're booked out 3 weeks.
mhm.
But when I go out there, I know they're desperate, right? Because they've already told me I didn't have to ask any secretive questions. They told me they have a graduation coming up. They need to get it done. So now you're going to get a premium quote. And uh, I had one customer question me on my price, and I told them, I'm booked out 3 weeks. I do have room to do your job, and it's going to cost you more than it would have if you waited 3 weeks. If you want to wait 3 weeks, I'll give you the non-premium
Mhm,
quote. If you want it done right now, you're going to get the premium quote because I'm going to have to bend over backwards to fit you in to get this
mhm.
done to meet your time obligations. And in order for me to do that, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, and that was like when those storms came through last year, and everybody was doing bids like crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd go out, and I think there was one day I did 67 bids in one day. I
Well,
went out and looked at the fence in one day, and there was probably 3 or 4 that I would show up at, and there's either posts already set or somebody's there setting posts, and I'm like,
yeah.
there. One time I walked in somebody's backyard to go look at the fence, and I don't Chuck in a truck or no name whatever was there setting posts, and I'm like, there's no locates, bud. Like, how do you know where the cables are? Oh, I'll be fine. I'm like, you got 20 more holes to dig.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, and I, the only thing I really will do without locates if it's necessary is post repairs.
Mm-hmm.
Because you, especially after doing it for long enough. But I mean, even now we call in locates for even if it's just one hole.
Yeah.
But if they want it done, like call and say, hey, we need it done within 48 hours. I'm like, well, like you said, you're going to pay a premium
Yeah.
price to get bumped ahead of everybody. But then that's when the experience comes into play and you got to trust your gut and stuff. But I'm like, I walked into that backyard and I was like, he's like, well, where's all the cables? And I'm like, you got 6 PEDs right here. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you're gonna hit power and hurt yourself or kill yourself or something. And I mean,
Yeah.
and I've hit, I've hit unmarked power. Well, it was marked, but it wasn't marked right. we were, one of my guys has done it, and I did it. There was the last time it happened. The power mark was 4 feet off. The paint mark was 4 feet
Mm-hmm.
off, and we were actually we were 4 feet away from any paint mark, so we were digging with the auger. And he went down, and there was some small trees in the area, but nothing crazy. And I was like, I could tell by the auger from it bouncing. I was like, that's a. I'm like, it acts like that's a tree root, but I'm like, there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing there. And the next minute, you just all of a sudden see sparks and stuff shooting out of the hole. And I'm like, and then there was one time years ago that I actually hit unmarked power, and it I mean, it was like as fast as a blink of an eye, and it blew me 8 feet straight back.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I always joke saying I got like 6, 7 lives left,
Yeah.
because
You're
I
like a cat.
mean, yeah, I mean, well, there's times where you go and do a job, and uh, you're literally digging right on top of cables and power lines. And I mean, in theory, those especially the power, should be deep enough. But I mean, I've seen them not. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
10 inches down, and I'm like this. I'm like somebody's gonna get killed. But
Yeah.
I mean, especially in like the newer neighborhoods, they're just trying to get everything in as fast as possible. And years ago, there was I can't remember. I think it was Cox or Century Link. I can't remember. They had a subcontractor come in from out of state, and they were paying them by the foot to lay the cable.
Yep.
And they were taking the sod, rolling it backwards, coiling it up underneath the sod, and rolling it back so they get paid more footage instead of burying it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and there was probably 12 calls in 2 months where they're like, we can't locate the yard. And I'm like, okay. And that's what had happened is they rolled the sod back and just laid the fiber lines and coax lines right underneath. And I'm like, come on.
Wow. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap up. We've been on here for a little while now.
no
Just wanted
worries.
to
It's been a
say
good
hello
time.
to a couple of people here. Chad, or not Chad, Craig Eubanks is on. Says, "What's up, fellas?" Trevor Nielsen, he's one of the guys that worked with me last year. And then Jessica Jackson and Aiden is also watching. Chris, just what a pleasure talking to you, hearing
Yeah, it
about
was fun.
all the different things you're doing and going through and dealing with as a Omaha fence builder. It's not easy. The market is, I would say, saturated.
I call it
You're probably
fence
as
war.
saturated, if not more, with builders as we are with stainers and painters who want to do the same line of work and don't want to follow the same processes. Uh, like we talked about, they're more about quantity over quality.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, any closing remarks or words that you want to leave the group that's watching and listening?
No, it was a fun time. I'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. We'll have to
Yeah.
do this again. We'll talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us and everybody who tuned in to watch. Uh, till Monday, I guess, when we have Edwin back on. So just a few days from now, and we'll see everyone then. Thanks a lot for watching, Chris. Thanks you again for coming on
Yeah.
and
No
sharing your
problem.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
See you later.